They fined me $750 for unauthorized lawn variance, even though the city's own code marked my grass height at 3.1 inches, well within the 4-inch limit. 3 days later, a notice showed up with a red-stamped threat of lien. That's when I started printing everything. Welcome to my channel. I'm Mark Elliott, a civil engineer out of Denton, Texas, and if you've ever fought an HOA, you'll understand why my coffee tastes like toner these days. I tell these stories so we remember that paperwork can protect us when pride won't. Subscribe if you care about fairness in your neighborhood, and tell me, where are you watching from? I like knowing which towns still value a front porch without a permit. I'd lived on Maple Trace Drive for 11 years, through 2 board changes and 3 storms that tested our roofs. My wife, Sarah, passed away 6 years ago, breast cancer, and I promised our daughter, Emily, that the house her mother built memories in would stay ours. That promise carried weight. It meant paying dues, planting native trees, and obeying rules until those rules turned personal. The trouble started when the HOA president, Marlene Cobb, told me during an open meeting that my solar panels cheapened the aesthetic value of the subdivision. She smiled as she said it, like she was reciting from a script. I reminded her that Denton County had a state solar rights statute. She smirked. "Statutes don't override our covenants, Mr. Elliott." That was my introduction to selective enforcement. Over the next month, I got 4 violation slips: fence shade tone, driveway discoloration, mailbox angle, and an unapproved garden structure. The structure was a compost bin the city itself encouraged. Each fine carried escalating threats: $150, then $300, then pending collection. I appealed twice. Both times the board voted against me without quorum notes. When you've buried someone you love, bureaucratic cruelty feels almost gentle by comparison, but I could sense something larger. Marlene was steering a redevelopment deal. The HOA had approved an amenity expansion loan of $420,000 without the 67% homeowner vote the bylaws required. I'd skimmed that section back when I moved in. This time, I read it like scripture. That night, I opened a fresh binder and wrote on the first page, "Audit every HOA. Start with ours." I wasn't alone. My neighbor Phil Tran, a retired city inspector with an asthmatic laugh, joined me over black coffee and old plats. "They're using outdated parcel maps," he said, circling a shaded strip behind our cul-de-sac. "That easement was never theirs to enforce. Belongs to the county drainage district." He wheezed out a chuckle. "Bet they don't even know." Sarah used to tease me for chasing patterns in things: traffic lights, zoning maps, rainfall data. But now those habits were armor. Every citation they sent me had timestamps. I built a timeline, noting intervals between notices. The gaps weren't random. Each arrived within 48 hours of a board vote or permit filing. Someone was linking my fines to HOA cash flow. I requested the financial statements under Texas Property Code, ID 209.005. They stalled, citing confidentiality. But the code said otherwise. Homeowners have inspection rights within 10 business days. When the 10th day passed, I mailed a certified letter quoting the statute word for word. 2 days later, Marlene herself appeared on my porch in a teal blazer, holding a clipboard. "You're becoming disruptive, Mark." "Requesting lawful records isn't disruption," I said. She leaned in. "You engineers think every number tells a story. Sometimes stories should stay buried." I smelled her perfume, synthetic lavender, and realized intimidation was her first language. That night, I rechecked Emily's college savings. Balance: $28,412. I couldn't risk litigation draining it. If I was going to fight, I had to do it surgically, with paper, not fury. I spent the weekend scanning deeds. In a 2003 amendment, I found a line item referencing Phase 3 parcels reserved for future amenities under a separate limited partnership. The partnership was defunct. Its controlling rights reverted to the county clerk by default. Translation: the HOA didn't own the land beneath their proposed clubhouse. Knowledge nugget number 1. Under Texas Property Code, on 82.115, common elements can't be encumbered or improved without 67% owner consent and proof of title. I smiled for the first time in weeks. If they built that clubhouse, every lien, every dollar, every permit would hang on a void foundation. The next morning, I filed a simple records request with the county. Parcel ownership confirmation. Processing time, 5 business days. The countdown began. By Wednesday, the HOA struck back. A $500 fine for improper lighting angle. Apparently, my porch bulb exceeded 1,800 lumens. They sent a photo taken at 9:43 p.m. through my hedge. Phil muttered, "They're watching you." I shrugged. Good, cameras record both ways. We set up our own time-stamped trail. Body cam, dash cam, mailbox log. I wasn't hunting vengeance. I was building credibility. On the 5th day, I drove to the county office and collected a single-page certificate. Parcel 27B. Title, retained by Denton County Drainage District, not HOA. I folded it like a sacred note and slid it into my binder. This was leverage. Quiet, lawful leverage. But leverage unused is just paperweight. That evening, as dusk turned the fields amber, I saw Marlene walking a visiting couple near the disputed lot, pointing and laughing like she already owned it. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from memory. Sarah's hands in the soil right there, planting the first cedar sapling. I whispered, "You don't get to erase her work." Then I turned back inside, printed 3 copies of the parcel certificate, and sealed them in envelopes. Phase 1 was over. Phase 2 would be patience. Patience lasted exactly 8 days before the next storm hit. On a muggy Thursday morning, I woke to 3 police cruisers idling by the curb. Officer Ruiz, who knew me from the neighborhood watch, approached slowly. "Mr. Elliott," he said, "we got a call about an unpermitted structure and possible environmental hazard." He nodded toward my compost bin, the same one from the violation notice. I laughed, too sharply. "You need to see a hazard? It's banana peels and coffee grounds." He sighed. "We have to document it." HOA filed the complaint. As he crouched to take a photo, I noticed Marlene's sedan parked at the corner, window cracked, watching. My phone time-stamped the encounter. 10:21 a.m., April 7th, documentation number 47. That afternoon, I added a new section to my binder labeled harassment log. Every officer, date, citation, tone. The numbers told a story. At the next open meeting, I stood quietly until they reached violations. Marlene cleared her throat. "We have one chronic non-compliance case, Mr. Elliott's property." I raised my hand. "Point of order. Section 3.7a of our bylaws requires a quorum of 5 for enforcement actions. Only 3 of you are here." She frowned. "We can proceed under executive authority." "Not without unanimous consent," I said, flipping my binder. "And you missed the filing deadline for your own annual report. County database shows it lapsed January 31st. Her expression faltered just long enough for the audience to murmur. That's when I knew the leverage had begun to breathe. Afterward, in the parking lot, Rachel Dunn, a local reporter I'd met years earlier while consulting on a flood project, caught up with me. "You really going after the board?" she asked, clicking her pen. "I'm going after the math," I said. "The law handles the retardate." Sit. Second engagement time. If you've ever had an HOA that tried to bury you under paperwork, tell me below how you fought back, or how you wish you had. And if you're one of the good ones serving fairly, leave your message for the bad HOAs reading these comments. By mid-May, I had allies. Attorney Carla Nunez, municipal law specialist, met me at a diner with a briefcase full of Post-its. "You're clean," she said, flipping pages. "Every violation they issued relies on a non-existent authority, but they're banking on you caving to legal costs." "I can't afford a suit." "Don't need one yet. File for inspection rights under Chapter 209 again, certified mail. This time, mark final notice before petition." She smiled, stirring her coffee. "They'll either open the books or make your case for you." I mailed it that night. When the deadline passed again, I dropped a copy of the county's title certificate, Parcel 27B, into an anonymous envelope and slid it under Marlene's office door. No note, no signature. Just the fact. The next morning, the HOA posted an emergency special assessment notice, $900 per homeowner, due in 30 days, for legal consultation and property acquisition. That was their panic tell. You could smell it in the phrasing. Too many legal adjectives, not enough logic. Phil whistled when he read it. They're robbing their own treasury to buy land they don't own. We started mapping money flows, dues in, checks out. Carla taught me to trace vendor IDs through the Texas Comptroller's site. That's where we found it. A consulting contract for Amenity Design LLC, registered to M. Cobb, same address as her husband's landscaping company. Conflict of interest in plain sight. Knowledge nugget number 2 would come later, but I scribbled it anyway. Direct self-dealing in HOA contracts violates fiduciary duty under Texas Business Organizations Code, Bar 122.230p. By June 1. Retaliation escalated. My mailbox was dented. Emily's bike tires were slashed. I filed a police report, number 2025-1946. Still, I kept my tone calm online. I posted a short video, 30 seconds, showing the compost bin, the violation, and the relevant statute side by side. Sometimes sunlight's the best disinfectant, I said. It hit 40,000 views in 2 days. The next board meeting was packed. Residents who'd ignored politics now sat forward in folding chairs, clutching printouts. When Marlene tried to open the agenda, a neighbor named Judith Hall, 72 and soft-spoken, stood. Before we pay another cent, we deserve to know where the money's gone. Applause echoed off the community hall's drywall. Marlene rapped the gavel. Out of order. No, I said, stepping to the mic. What's out of order is a $420,000 loan made without title or consent. I placed a copy of the parcel certificate on the podium. This land belongs to the county, not this board. Every expenditure tied to it is void. She tried to grab it, but Carla, standing behind me, cleared her throat. Touch that, and it's evidence. For a long moment, only the air conditioner hummed. Then Marlene smiled, thin and cold. You're bluffing. Check the clerk's stamp, I said. Filed April 12th, 10:03 a.m. The room erupted in whispers. That night, 3 more violation notices appeared on my door. I took photos, uploaded them to my log, and wrote one sentence in my notebook. Let them hang themselves with process. I didn't know it then, but the trap was already set. 2 weeks later, the summer heat baked everything still. The subdivision shimmered under 98 degrees of stubborn sunlight, and the only thing hotter than the pavement was Marlene's panic. She'd called an emergency informational session to reassure homeowners about the assessment. Translation: damage control. Phil and I sat near the back, close enough to the exit in case things got ugly. Carla whispered, "Watch her language. Words like ownership, title, acquisition, each one's a legal tripwire." Sure enough, Marlene clicked through a PowerPoint slide showing glossy renderings of a future clubhouse. The crowd murmured approval until I stood up and asked one question. Can you show us the recorded deed transfer authorizing HOA ownership of parcel 27B? The screen froze. Then she snapped, "You engineers always think you know better than the rest of us." I said, "Not better, just verifiable." The projector bulb flickered, maybe from heat, maybe from nerves. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Answer him!" And suddenly the illusion of control slipped. Marlene adjourned the meeting, citing technical difficulties. Outside, Phil's laugh wheezed through the humid air. She blinked, but blinking wasn't surrender. The next morning, my bank app pinged. Automatic draft blocked. The HOA had tried to pull dues twice in one day. My account froze for suspicious activity. Carla wasn't surprised. Classic pressure tactic. They're trying to trigger late fees and default clauses. I tightened my grip on the phone. So I document, stay calm, and let them overextend. She nodded. Exactly. Every overreach strengthens your future claim. Meanwhile, Emily asked if we'd have to move. That question hit harder than any fine. No, I told her. We'll fix this so no one else has to ask that again. That night, as I sorted through inspection reports, I found a pattern. Marlene had signed every single enforcement letter herself. The bylaws required a 2-signature process for fines over $200. 47 violations, 1 signer. That wasn't policy. That was dictatorship. I added it to the binder under a new tab labeled Governance Breach. Then, under my breath, "You shouldn't have signed everything, Marlene." Phil brought over lemonade, grinning. "You planning a coup?" "Just an audit." He chuckled. "Audits topple empires, kid." By now, half the neighborhood was whispering about the land issue. Some thanked me in private, too scared to speak up. Others worried exposure would tank property values. That's the paradox of HOA wars. You fight for collective good and get branded a troublemaker. Still, we pressed on. Carla introduced me to Greg Sloan, a retired county assessor with ink-stained cuffs and a voice like gravel. He volunteered to help trace the financials. "Their filings don't add up," he said, tapping his pen. "Expenditures exceed assessment revenue by 14%, and there's no matching contractor receipts." I asked, "Could it be accounting error?" He grinned. "Could be theft. Either way, sunlight's coming." Knowledge nugget number 1, revisited through Greg's lens. In Texas, HOAs must retain financial records for at least 5 years and make them available to any member within 10 business days of written request. Failure equals statutory violation, not mere policy breach. That evening, I uploaded my scanned binder to cloud storage, time-stamped, geotagged, and redundant. If they wanted a fight, it would be fought on records, not rumor. Late that night, my security camera pinged. A shadow near the driveway. The figure bent over, slipped something under the wiper of my truck, and disappeared. It was a flyer. "Stop the malicious attacks on our board. Protect property values," with my name in bold beneath it. I exhaled slow. Harassment had gone public. Still, I smiled faintly. Every whisper they spread was data, proof of pattern. The more noise they made, the clearer my signal became. By the next board meeting, I drafted a 34-page report titled Procedural and Financial Irregularities, Maple Trace HOA, FY 2024. Each section cross-referenced evidence, citations, timestamps, deed copies. I printed 3 bound copies on heavy stock. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was documenting a case for every homeowner too. Tired or scared to speak. As I packed the folder, Emily watched from the kitchen table. "Dad," she said, "Mom would have liked this." "Yeah," I whispered. "She would have said I finally found a project that mattered." Before the next meeting, I posted online. Should HOAs have to publish full financial ledgers the same way public agencies do? Transparency or chaos? What's your take? The comments poured in faster than I could read. Homeowners across the country shared horror stories. One said their board president had installed $20,000 of decorative boulders using his brother's company. Another said their dues doubled without warning. I realized this wasn't just my fight. It was systemic. And systems, once exposed, start to collapse. Collapse doesn't happen overnight. It starts with whispers and ends with subpoenas. By July, the subdivision felt like a pressure cooker. Lawn crews slowed down near my house. Mail carriers waved a little longer, and Marlene's once loyal board members stopped parking in front of her place. They'd begun to sense the current shifting. Carla advised patience. "We have them cornered by procedure. Don't gloat, don't post, just keep receipts." Receipts were my oxygen now. Every email, every late notice, every timestamp, each one fit into the timeline like bricks in a wall. The law loves order, and I was building a fortress of it. The board called a compliance hearing for me alone. Wednesday, July 17th, 6:00 p.m. Their attempt to make me kneel. I arrived in my work shirt, binder under arm, calm as a man entering a library. Marlene opened with that syrupy tone she used when cameras weren't rolling. "Mr. Elliott, you've created unnecessary discord within our community. Will you cease these defamatory allegations?" I said evenly, "Defamation requires falsehood, ma'am. Everything I've stated is documented, signed, or certified." She smirked. "You're not an attorney." "True. I'm an engineer. I deal in load-bearing truths." Behind her, a board member shifted uncomfortably. It lost quorum again, only 4 of 6 present. That detail alone made the meeting procedurally void, but I let it continue. Sometimes you let the rope spool out. When she finished her speech about protecting neighborhood harmony, I slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were copies of the conflict of interest filings Greg had uncovered, payments from the HOA account to her husband's landscaping company, totaling $38,600 in one fiscal year. She glanced down and froze. "Where did you—" "Public record," I interrupted. "County vendor registry. You should have changed the DBA name before funneling payments through it." Phil, sitting in the back, stifled a laugh that came out like a cough. Marlene's voice sharpened. You think you're clever, Mr. Elliott, but none of this matters unless you can prove harm. I tapped the binder. Homeowners paid illegal assessments based on false ownership claims. That's harm quantified at $900 times 84 houses. Her gavel hit the table so hard the head splintered. Meeting adjourned. Outside, Carla grinned. She just confirmed the payments exist on record. That's admission by implication. I felt the tension uncoil in my chest, but not relief. Anticipation. The domino line was set. The first one had just tipped. The next morning, the HOA website went offline for maintenance. 2 days later, Marlene emailed all residents accusing me of hacking the site. I laughed out loud. My firewall logs alone could clear me, and I saved them anyway. That afternoon, the mailbox held a certified letter from the HOA's attorney threatening civil remedies for interference. Carla read it over lunch and smirked. They're bluffing. They won't file. They'd have to produce discovery. Still, it meant they were desperate. The plan crystallized that week. Greg helped draft a petition requesting a special audit under Texas Property Code, FAR 209.0057. We only needed 25% homeowner signatures, 21 out of 84. By Sunday, I had 31 SA. Phil handled the door-to-door work. Judith called neighbors she'd known for decades. The air buzzed with a new kind of talk. Numbers, rights, clauses. Knowledge was contagious. Midway through the drive, I posted a quiet question online. How far should an HOA's control extend? Your porch, your paint, your solar panels. Where's the real line between order and ownership? Comment your boundary. It wasn't clickbait. It was therapy for every overregulated soul watching. By August 2nd, Marlene's composure cracked publicly. She showed up at my driveway as I was loading tools, accusing me of instigating rebellion. Her voice carried across the cul-de-sac. You'll regret this, Mark. We have the city on our side. I didn't rise to it. I just said, then you won't mind if I copy them on my next report. Her face flushed crimson, and she stomped off, heels stabbing gravel. That evening, Carla sent a text. County inspection report came in early. Drainage parcel confirmed non-transferable. That's your bulletproof clause. I stared at the phone, exhaled, and whispered to myself, reversal number 1, locked and loaded. The trick now was timing. I couldn't fire it too soon. Let them announce another project. Dig the hole a little deeper. Visual beat number 1 arrived that weekend. I printed the county certificate, slid it into a glass frame, and placed it beside Sarah's old cedar sapling. The reflection of the sunset caught the seal like a promise. Phil joined me on the porch. You ready? He asked. Almost, I said, just waiting for them to think they've won. He nodded slowly. That's when the paperwork hits hardest. I smiled. Exactly. Paper doesn't shout, it snaps. The snap came sooner than I thought. On August 12th, I returned from a site inspection to find an orange tag on my front door. Final notice. Property non-compliant. The fine tally stood at $4,150. The lien threat in saos. Bold. My stomach turned cold. Not fear exactly, just that heavy clarity that precedes a storm. Carla examined the paper under her office lamp. They're bluffing again. They can't record a lien without judicial order and they know it, but they're baiting you into a misstep. I exhaled. So I keep documenting. Exactly. Don't let emotion breach the record. That became my mantra. Every harassing act went into the binder, the anonymous postcards calling me traitor, the late-night knocks that left no one visible, the inspection reports that duplicated week after week. The pattern screamed bad faith. Phil and I rigged motion lights and new cameras. One night, we caught 2 board members trespassing onto my property line, measuring my fence with a tape and laughing. The footage was clear, time-stamped, and perfectly legal. Texas is a one-party consent state for recordings made on your own property. Knowledge, nugget number 2. Under Texas Penal Code, FAR 30.05, HOA officials have no special immunity from trespass. Private property lines still apply, even to those enforcing compliance. The next morning, I sent the footage to Carla and copied Officer Ruiz. His reply was short. Received. Will issue warning notices. By the weekend, the HOA newsletter painted me as a community destabilizer. They called Phil my agitator accomplice. He found that hilarious. After 40 years in code enforcement, that's the nicest thing anyone's called me. Still, the tone inside the house changed. Emily started double-checking locks before bed. She asked if we should stay at her aunt's for a while. That's when it hit me how deep the HOA's intimidation had reached, not just into my wallet, but into our peace. I sat on the porch that night, listening to the crickets and the low hum of streetlights, and whispered to Sarah's cedar sapling, "They're not just coming for paperwork. They're coming for Ma, Emery. I won't let them." The next morning, I walked into the county recorder's office and filed a notice of title irregularity referencing Parcel 27B. It wasn't aggressive, it was informational. But informational filings have a way of detonating quietly in bureaucratic systems. 3 days later, the HOA's loan bank froze its disbursement. The manager called Marlene for clarification of collateral ownership. She couldn't provide it. The domino line wobbled. Marlene doubled down, scheduling a special compliance sweep. They brought clipboards, cameras, and measuring tools, moving from yard to yard like a convoy. Homeowners peeked through curtains. I stood on my porch, camera rolling, calm and steady. When they reached my house, Marlene barked, "You can't record us. This is private HOA business." I replied, "This is my property, ma'am, and Texas follows one-party consent. You're on record." Her jaw locked. "You'll regret this footage." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe you'll wish you'd followed your own bylaws." Later that night, I posted a community message, measured, factual. If anyone else receives duplicate violations, please document dates, photos, and witnesses. Patterns tell truth. That single post shifted the neighborhood mood. Within 48 hours, residents shared dozens of scanned notices. Some were identical, with changed dates. Others bore Marlene's signature but wrong parcel numbers. Evidence of a cut-and-paste operation. Phil sorted them chronologically. "This isn't enforcement, it's revenue generation," he muttered. Carla smiled grimly. "Selective enforcement plus self-dealing. This crosses into fraud territory." My pulse steadied. The wall I'd been building was now a fortress with windows. The whole community could see inside. Still, retaliation sharpened. Late one evening, as I reviewed maps, a pickup slowed in front of my house, headlights sweeping across the living room. The driver revved twice and rolled on. I noted the plate, logged the time. Nothing would scare me into rashness. The next day, I added a line to my binder in red ink. Patience ends September 5th. Because that's when the HOA planned its grand groundbreaking ceremony for the non-existent clubhouse. The mayor had been invited. The press, too. I already knew how I'd attend, quietly, with facts that would turn their shovels to lead. Before that, I released another discussion post. What should happen when HOA boards harass homeowners? Fines, probation, or full removal? Leave your verdict below, or at least like the video so the lawmakers see it. The comments exploded again. Stories of hidden cameras, fake liens, selective citations. The country was listening now. At home, I slid the final piece of leverage, a notarized assignment of inspection rights from the drainage district, into my folder. It gave me authority to halt any unpermitted construction on that parcel. I closed the binder, the sound sharp like a gavel. "Time to audit every HOA," I whispered, starting with this one. September 5th arrived under a brittle blue sky. The HOA's grand groundbreaking ceremony looked like something out of a campaign ad. Folding chairs, ribbon, local realtor banners, even a rented podium with gold fringe. Marlene stood front and center in her teal blazer, shovel in hand, radiating confidence she hadn't earned. I stayed at the edge of the crowd with my binder and a manila envelope under my arm. Carla, Phil, and Judith flanked me like quiet sentinels. A county inspector in khaki uniform, Inspector Darrell Kemp, waited near his truck, clipboard ready. He was the neutral authority, and he didn't even know it yet. Marlene tapped the mic. "Today we make Maple Trace history," she declared, voice amplified across the cul-de-sac. "Our new clubhouse will bring unity and value to our community." I stepped forward before she could lift the shovel. "Excuse me, Madam President, but before you disturb county property, you should review this." The crowd hushed. She blinked. "You're out of order, Mark." I handed the manila envelope to Inspector Kemp. "Sir, that's a certified copy of the parcel certificate and assignment of inspection rights from the Denton County Drainage District. This land isn't under HOA jurisdiction." He flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing. "This is valid," he said slowly. "File number 1427C, recorded April 12th. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marlene's face drained of color. "This man is lying," she snapped. Kemp looked at her flatly. "Ma'am, the county seal's genuine. You don't have construction authority here. If you proceed, you'll be violating Section 11.09 of the County Code, unlawful improvement on government-maintained easement." I didn't smile, but the satisfaction hit like oxygen. Quiet, lawful, clean. Phil leaned over, whispering, "That's the sound of the rope tightening." The photographers captured the frozen tableau. Marlene gripping the shovel mid-air, Kemp holding the paper between them, homeowners craning to see. Visual beat number 2, etched in pixels forever. After a tense minute, Marlene lowered the shovel. "We'll clarify this with our counsel." "Do that," I said, "but make sure to tell them your loan collateral just evaporated." Gasps, then silence. I turned to the mic and spoke to the crowd. "We're not here to destroy our neighborhood. We're here to restore lawful order. Check your bylaws, check your votes, check who profits when we stay silent." Applause started from Judith's side of the lawn, hesitant at first, then growing. Even a few former loyalists clapped. That night, the HOA website crashed again. This time it wasn't maintenance. It was resignation. 2 board members stepped down within 48 hours. The bank withdrew the $420,000 loan. The clubhouse project died on paper. By September 9th, local news ran a 2-minute segment titled HOAD, Development Halted Over Ownership Dispute. They used a still image of Kemp holding the certificate, my binder visible in frame. Emily saw it and grinned. "Dad, you look like a lawyer." "Just a man with a printer," I said. Online, I posted the next discussion cue. Should homeowners buy small stakes, easements, parcels, or liens to keep HOAs accountable? Or is that too far? Comment your strategy. Responses poured in. Engineers, veterans, single parents, all telling me how they'd outpapered their bullies. The story was spreading. Behind the scenes, the domino collapse gained momentum. Greg confirmed that the HOA's insurer had flagged potential fraud exposure. Their coverage was suspended pending audit. The bank demanded updated signatures. Contractors pulled out. Knowledge nugget number 3. When an HOA loses fidelity insurance due to suspected mismanagement, board members become personally liable for legal costs and restitution. By the end of the month, the neighborhood's gossip channels had flipped tone, from "Mark the troublemaker" to "Mark saved us from bankruptcy." Still, Marlene fought back. She filed a cease and desist letter claiming defamation, demanding I remove false online statements. Carla drafted a 4-line reply. "Our client's statements are true, supported by documentary evidence, and made in the public interest. Further threats will constitute retaliation under Texas Civil Practice Remedies, Code PR 27.003. After that, silence. I thought about revenge briefly, but the wiser part of me knew the real win wasn't humiliation. It was reform. Paper beats power, but reform sustains peace. I could feel the second reversal forming, the exchange of leverage for reconstruction, the chance to leave something better behind than bitterness. Phil raised his mug on my porch that night, coffee steam curling in the cool air. "You going to push for their removal?" "Not exactly," I said. "Something cleaner. Structure outlasts people." He nodded, satisfied. "Then do it right." And that's when I started drafting the charter that would change everything. The charter began as scribbles in the margins of my binder, ideas between citations and timestamps. By mid-October, it had turned into a 12-page proposal called the Maple Trace Transparency Amendment. Its spine was simple: term limits, open accounting, independent ethics oversight, and homeowner voting access. No revenge, just prevention. Carla reviewed it with that careful lawyer's calm. "You're not asking to dissolve them. You're asking them to grow up. Smart." Phil chuckled over his thermos. "Yeah, you're offering them a ladder instead of a shovel." The timing mattered. The HOA's annual meeting was set for October 28th at the community hall, the same place Marlene had once silenced questions with her gavel. This time, I would bring light, not heat. I spent the days leading up to it gathering signatures, explaining clauses on porches and driveways. People listened now. Some were embarrassed they'd looked away before. Others were angry they'd paid so long without asking where the money went. But anger can build too, if it's pointed right. Emily helped staple handouts. Mom would have liked this, she said again, quieter this time. She'd remind me to breathe, I said. When the night came, the room was packed. Nearly every homeowner, even those who usually skipped meetings. Kemp, the inspector, sat near the back at my invitation. His presence alone reminded everyone that authority, when impartial, isn't the enemy. Marlene took the podium, eyes hollowed from weeks of damage control. "We'll begin with new business," she said flatly. I stood. "Madam President, I move to introduce an amendment for transparency reforms." She tried to gavel me down, but the crowd wasn't having it. Judith's voice rose. "Let him speak." I read aloud the first clause, 2 consecutive term limits for board members, then mandatory quarterly financial reports, then an open records portal accessible to all residents. The room hummed with approval. Marlene barked, "This is grandstanding. He's manipulating you." I handed a microphone to her. "Then refute it. Tell us which clause violates our bylaws." She glanced down, lost. The lawyer she'd hired wasn't there. Rumor said he'd withdrawn after the insurer freeze. She stammered something about maintaining order, but the crowd was already voting with their voices. The turning point came when Phil spoke up from the back. "We've lived here 20 years. If order means secrecy, count me out." Applause swelled, echoing off the hall's tin roof. Marlene slammed the gavel once more. The head cracked clean off. That sound marked the end of her reign. I turned to Kemp. "Sir, can you confirm for the record that the HOA no longer holds authority over Parcel 27B or any property derived from the invalid loan?" He nodded. "Confirmed. County jurisdiction only. Any further enforcement there will be referred for investigation." The room broke into scattered cheers. Cameras clicked. Someone live-streamed. Visual beat number 2 replayed itself in real time. Law. Crowd. Validation. Marlene's final attempt at dignity was to announce her resignation, effective immediately. She left without her folder. After she walked out, I approached the mic again. This isn't about one person. It's about remembering that community isn't control. It's consent. We took a formal vote on the Transparency Amendment. 74 yes, 3 no, 7 abstained. Motion passed. That night, I posted a new reflection online. When authority ignores its own rules, do you dismantle it or reform it? What's the line between accountability and vengeance? Comment where you stand. The replies were thoughtful this time. Less outrage, more philosophy. Maybe people were tired of fighting and ready to build. By morning, local news followed up. HOA overhaul passes unanimously. After audit scandal. The story trended statewide. Real reform had traction now. Greg called with a grin in his voice. "You realize this could set precedent? Other neighborhoods will cite Maple Trace." "Good," I said. "Let's make paperwork contagious." Still, part of me watched the headlines with quiet humility. Victory can turn sour if you savor it too long. Phil dropped by later, carrying 2 cups of diner coffee. "Feels strange, doesn't it? No more battles." "Not yet," I said. "We've got implementation ahead. But yeah, strange good." We sat on the porch in silence, the cedar sapling taller now, branches whispering in the wind. Somewhere in the dark, a cricket chirped, steady and small, like a heartbeat returning to normal. Implementation always looks smaller than the battle that made it possible. By November, the new interim board met in the same hall where Marlene had once pounded her gavel. This time, the tables were covered with spreadsheets and coffee, not subpoenas. Carla sat beside me as counsel, Phil handled compliance audits, and Judith, our moral compass, took notes in her careful cursive. We began by reading out the adoption of the Maple Trace Transparency Amendment. I recorded every voice vote. The bylaws now required public posting of financials, a 20% rollback on dues until reserves stabilized, and quarterly open meetings streamed online. It wasn't drama, it was governance, clean and visible. The insurance company sent a letter acknowledging cooperation with the audit and reinstated basic coverage. Greg's final report listed $61,400 in questionable disbursements that would be subject to restitution proceedings. Quiet justice, line by line. Reversal number 2, unfolded gently, not with fireworks, but with signatures. In exchange for dropping potential civil suits, the new board adopted a formal community access charter guaranteeing transparent votes and fair use of common areas. Marlene's resignation and reimbursement agreement, $1,450. €, plus removal from any fiduciary position for 5 years, was notarized that same week. Phil leaned over and whispered, "Clean exit, that's rare." "Clean's the only kind worth having," I replied. I drafted the closing report for residents. Audit complete, compliance restored, future secured. It ended with one sentence Sarah would have liked: "Community is built, not bought." 2 days later, we held a modest barbecue at the park. Kids played under string lights, the air thick with hickory smoke. Emily laughed with her friends without glancing over her shoulder. That was the real verdict. The next morning, a local paper ran the headline, "Engineers Paper Trail Sparks HOA Reform." They quoted me saying, "No homeowner should need a lawyer to plant a tree." It felt true. Before closing that week's video, I looked straight into the camera. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how community should work, say a few words in the comments for your neighbor or your friend. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And if this reminded you of your own battle, share it. Someone out there needs to know laws still mean something when we use them. Then I added quieter, "Justice doesn't roar, it signs, stamps, and files." We ended with a simple visual. The old violation notices curling in a fire pit behind my house, paper edges glowing orange against the dark. Visual beat number 3, a final act of release. A week later, I received a certified envelope from the state registrar. Confirmation that the Maple Trace Transparency Amendment had been logged as precedent for community reform guidelines. One small story, now inked into public record. In the months that followed, 3 other HOAs in neighboring counties adopted similar transparency charters. Emails arrived from strangers thanking me for the blueprint. It wasn't fame I felt, it was closure. At night I'd stand by the cedar tree Sarah planted, now 6 feet tall, and listen to the leaves rustle like paper turning. Emily joined me once, phone light bouncing off her smile. "So, what's next, Dad?" I looked down the quiet street where porch lights glowed like stars and said, "There's always another HOA." She laughed. "You're serious?" "Yeah," I said, "and I've already got a new binder." Then we walked inside, leaving the night to its calm.